All right, thanks, Adam. So I'm going to talk about modern Next.js, Tailwind 4, and Tina. Just some tips to make your development and your sites faster. So I've broken this down. So I'll talk about Next.js, then Tailwind, some UI components. We'll talk about how TinaCMS fits into this, and I'll give you some tips in terms of how to improve things. So, Matt Wicks. I'm Solution Architect at SSW and the product owner for TinaCMS and Tina Cloud. There are my details on there. And let's just jump straight into Next.js. So who here is using Next.js at the moment? Yep, most people. Awesome. Hopefully you're on Next 15. If not, you're going to be learning quite a bit of new stuff here. So why would you choose Next.js? Well, it's a full stacked React meta framework. So in the same way, like it's along the lines of Angular. So Angular is a very opinionated TypeScript framework. Next.js is opinionated. So if you're doing React, you can use any tool you want. If you're using Next.js, you don't have to choose a router. There's already a routing system built in. You don't need to choose how you're doing image handling. It's already built in. So you get a lot of opinions in there. And that, as a result of it being opinionated, there's a lot of performance optimizations as a result of that. You get a really good developer experience. So when you want to build things, there is a way to do it already. So when you jump on between projects, it's a lot easier because you don't need to relearn things. And it supports a whole bunch of things. So when you're building your site, it's not just your site. You may have some API routes in there. You may want to have some middleware doing things as things are flying in and out. And there's a whole bunch of TLAs that you get to learn. And we'll cover those in a sec. But essentially, it's the way that pages are rendered out. We'll have a look at that soon. So by the numbers, this is the State of JS 2024 survey. And it looked at a whole bunch of questions in terms of JavaScript development. This one was for front-end frameworks, and we can see up here, this blue line is actually Next.js. So it starts earlier than everyone else, and it's above everyone else by not a small margin. So you'll find that it is one of the most popular frameworks out there. If we look at JavaScript and TypeScript usage, there is Next.js supports both. They did have an April Fool's joke to say that they were dropping JavaScript usage, but thankfully that was just April Fool's. Irregardless, most projects you can see here go for lots of TypeScript use, and Next will support both. If we look at the app patterns, these are those TLAs that I was talking about before. You may be building a single-page application, you may be doing server-side rendering, static site generation, or have some hydration in there, or incremental static generation. Yes?
Oh, for that, we'll again.
They were dropping JavaScript support.
Okay, right.
Next.js.
On Next.js, we're dropping. Oh,
yeah, it's
Next.js.
It'll be Next.js. But anyway, yeah. It's
a good idea.
I don't know. Look, they support both, and that I think the fact that they support both is good. So if you drop JavaScript support, you have to change the name anyway. So it's a bit of a dumb. I don't know. It was pretty lame. It wasn't as cool as my April Fool's joke. So anyway, there's a lot of different app patterns that you can do. Next.js supports the big ones. I didn't want to, just drop all the different patterns on you straight away. So we'll go into that a little later in terms of what they are when you use them. But they are very popular, and Next supports a lot of them. This is the Stack Overflow survey for 2024 in terms of web frameworks and technologies. We can see at the top, Node.js, React is right up there, 39.5%. So React is super popular with web tech. jQuery is up there, which is a bit surprising given it's 2024, but it's still around. Then the next thing is Next.js at almost 18%. So there is more than 1 in 6 people out there are doing stuff with Next.js, which is kind of huge.
Oh,
yeah.
week plus the month plus 3 months plus 10 months.
It's not, well, no, it is a percentage of people that say they use it. So, yeah, not everyone, you can use multiple things. So, yeah, the numbers, yeah, they don't add up to 100, but it's based off the respondents, what they said they used. So what's new in Next 15? Well, we've got React 19 support in the app router, and that's stable in 15.1. So version 15 shipped, and they supported the release candidate. It's stable now. I think they're up to 15.3 at the moment. There's still React 18 support, and you can use the app router for that, and you can use the previous Pages router. So they're not adding, Pages routers is not being deprecated, but they're not adding all the nice new stuff to it. So if you want to use React 19, go for the app router. You get a really good result with that. There's experimental support for the React compiler. So if the React compiler is, it is a compiler for React, but the beauty of it is you don't need to use things like your use memo hook. So if you want to memoize the result of things, the compiler will take care of that for you. And there's a bunch of hydration error improvements. So hydration is a situation where you push out some static HTML, and then the browser then downloads the single page application and swaps in place. Now, there are situations where, so that process is called hydration, and the situations where you can have issues with that when the single page application content doesn't match what was served statically. And in Next 14, this is kind of what you get. You get this unhandled runtime error. Hydration failed because the initial UI doesn't match what was rendered on the server, and there's some tags where things went wrong. So yeah, I look at that, I know exactly where I need to go. There's some div in a div with a P, and does anyone find this useful? Like this type of error message? Some people find this useful. Okay, I don't find this that useful because I don't really know what to look for. But when I switch to Next 15, I get this much nicer experience. I get some reasons why this could be happening, and then I get a much clearer thing about where it's happening. So I think this is a huge improvement because things like date formatting and you want to have some randomness on there. These are reasons why it would happen. So you may find the problem. Why did I have a problem? Well, here you go. So I think this is really cool. Next 15 also changed some APIs to be synchronous to asynchronous. So a bit of a breaking change. They did document it, but like something like this, where this type of change affects multiple places. So the way you access cookies, headers, or parameters, so things coming out of your URLs and things like that, or search params out of the query string. So that's a bunch of breaking changes. You don't want to go through all the files and try and manually change it. So the cool thing is you can run a command and it'll run a code mod against your code base. So it'll try and find it and fix them for you. So these, with breaking changes comes a nice experience, which is good. The caching semantics changed as well. Next 14 had a situation where when you were getting content, so maybe you were calling an API, getting some data back, and then rendering the page from fetch requests and things like that, they were cached by default in Next 14. Now that's a little bit unexpected at times. So what they did was they changed it to be not cached by default. So cache is now opt-in instead of opt-out. Now we had this, we experienced this with TinaCMS. So some of, I think it was the ActShaver team were building some things, and some bits were out of sync. And it was a result of this change with Next.js. So we've documented that on this blog post, so you can go check it out on the Tina.io blog. And if you deploy things to Vercel, you would have been affected as well. But we've got a nice post up there in terms of what to look for, how to tweak things, what parameters to change. Next 15 also introduced a thing called TurboPack. So it's a Rust-based builder. Now, this is coming from Webpack. So think of the difference between a high-speed bullet train versus a freight train. Now, if you've ever gone to a level rail crossing, you know how slow the trains go through. If you do that around the Hunter Valley where I live, those are coal trains that are super long, so it takes even longer. So these Webpack is kind of like that freight train. You're sitting at the level rail crossing for 5 minutes or whatever, waiting for the things to go past and the gates to go up so you can drive through. Whereas the TurboPack is more like the maglev trains in China or the bullet trains in Japan. Super quick. You're looking at 5 times faster cold starts, 10 times faster refreshes for your pages, because it's, incremental building really means just less waiting. TurboPack, you can use that for development. By default, that's turned on when you set up an X15 project. This is areweturboyet.com. So this is Vercel showing, should you be using TurboPack for everything. So for development, yes, there's only one test that's failing, but it's fine for development. For production, it's a no at the moment. So you're looking at 99.3% test passing, but they're still not saying it's ready for production. Once that happens, though, this is going to be a big deal. Because it's Rust-based and not JavaScript-based, you can take advantage of multiple cores on your builds. Now, if you've got very large mono repos, you can throw like 30 cores at it and really use your build server and work it out. And you can almost get double the speed of builds, so 83% faster builds when compared to Webpack when you have 30 cores. That's pretty cool. There's a bunch of DX improvements as well. So we talked about I showed you one of the code mods. There's a whole bunch more at next/codemod and in the Next docs. There's ESLint version 9 support, which is good because, it's a big change. We've been using Biome.js for TinaCMS, and that's been working out really well because it does some of the prettification. So we don't need prettier as well. It's just one tool. There's TypeScript support in the next config file. So you can import a type and then have some auto-completion happening there and some type safety on your config file. And depending on what type of page you're rendering, you can actually tell Next in the Next config to spit out a little fab, well, not a fab, but a little indicator in the bottom of the page, so you know that it's going to be rendered as a static route as opposed to being dynamically rendered. Cool. So that's a little bit about Next.js 15 and the updates. Let's get you up to speed on Tailwind. So why would you use Tailwind? Well, it's utility-first CSS framework, so you're dealing with really small and focused classes that do small things. So the idea is instead of having really big CSS classes that may you make a change to that and that may affect many places, your blast radius of changes are focused down to just the component that you're changing. Now, this will help you rapidly build up UI with a consistent design. You can usually go and copy paste HTML with Tailwind and put it into your application, and it just works straight away because of the way that the classes are set up. There's a strong community around this. It works really seamlessly with Next.js. And if you're into AI likes it as well. So if you're a vibe coder, go for it, but it's not specifically for vibe coding. It's just really AI friendly. So what's new with that? Well, the way that Tailwind builds out CSS has gone Rust-based as well for speed improvements. So they're talking, like almost 4 times faster. This is really important because what Tailwind tries to do is only ship the CSS that's required. So it looks at all your components and all the usages. So going Rust-based, again, they can use up all the cores on your system and spit it out a lot faster, which is good. If you break down into lots of components, it's a lot more files to check. This is helpful. Version 4 has gone for a CSS-First approach as opposed to a config-based approach. There's a lot more focus on CSS variables, and you can do a lot of dynamic things with the CSS now. It uses the color mix stuff from CSS4 for dealing with things like opacity to just have a more consistent experience. You can use container queries, and you don't need to configure it for it to find your files. It just finds your files now. So it's that they're saying it's a zero config content detection. So previously, you'd have a config file like this. It would have you set some things up in here in terms of your screen sizes, your color palettes, and maybe you'd extend different parts. But I'm not a big fan of this because when you're setting things under theme, you're actually overriding what the defaults would be, and then you're extending other parts of it. So it's a little bit confusing. The new system is, hey, you've got a CSS file, you define your CSS variables, and it will work out the rest. So it's a lot smarter. The other thing you may notice is these colors. It's using this OKLCH instead of an RGB hex code or an HSB. So what's that all about? Well, let's say you've got this website, and we're looking at this website, and it's got a lot of red on it. Now, the boss comes along and says, if you can make that brighter, that would be great. So how do I do this? Well, I don't know, because it's RGB. It's like, there's a couple of hex bits for hex bytes for the red, a couple for the blue, couple green, and then blue. How do I fix this up? Well, I'd most probably go to ChatGPT and ask it a question. I've got an RGB color. Give me options for making it brighter. And it's doing some nice stuff. It's giving me a table saying, hey, if you want to increase the lightness, add white tinting, boost the red channel, a vibrant alternative. I just want to make it brighter. Which one is it? If I look at the hex, I can't work it out. So I go in and I play around with the different values, and pretty quickly it turns into brown, because that's what I've done. When I learned how to mix colors in primary school, you mix enough colors, it just turns into brown. So that's not great. A better way is to use OKLCH. So this is a change in Tailwind 4. They switched from the sRGB system to this new system, and it stands for OKLab Lightness Chroma Hue. Now, can I use this? Resoundingly, the answer is yes, unless you're using IE11. If you're using IE11, though, you've got bigger problems. So definitely use this new color spectrum. If you want to understand the difference between it, this is how RGB would render sort of red to blue. You've got your reds. That's definitely red. That's definitely green. And that's definitely blue. But it kind of looks wavy when I look at it. So let's just zoom in and just scan a little. So red to green, and you can definitely feel the colors pulsing, the brightness pulsing. So that kind of sucks. It's not consistent. If we compare this to OKLCH, when it modifies the color, it looks a lot flatter. So hopefully you can see that in that screen. If you can't, it's not. It just maybe the TV's not showing it off, the different brightnesses. But when I look at it on the screens here and on my screen, especially when you're looking at it on phones, because they tend to have better screens than laptops, it's a very consistent brightness. Now, this is really important because OKLCH shows things, describes it in the way describes colors in the ways that humans perceive it. The way it works out is you can actually programmatically generate palettes. You don't need to muck around with the red, green, blue. You can find specific colors quite easily. The brightness is now predictable because it's consistent, and that actually leads to better accessibility when you're choosing the differences between colors, because you can quite predictably, work out what the contrast will be. Evenly distributed hues, and it supports wide gamut color displays. So like my Mac here has got a P3 display, which is a bit wider. It's kind of, it shows more colors. You may have an HDR display like a lot of the phones, and you can take advantage of those. So what do we mean by wide gamut? Well, if you were to see the LCH in 3 dimensions, this is kind of what it would look like. And the width of this circle would be the gamut. So you can actually support a wider circle. Now this is human readable. The lightness is 0 to 100. So how light do you want the color? So when the boss comes along and says, can you make it lighter? You just jack up that one color. The chroma is the saturation. So that's how wide we want to go out. Now, for just a normal screen, you may be going to a 0 to 0.4. If you wanted to show some something on like a P3 display, you could go out to 0.6. You could go out all the way to 1 for a wide gamut, but it offers more extendability. There is no real limit on this. These would just be some suggested limits. So that's the chroma. In terms of what color you're going for, well, that's the hue, and that's just a 360-degree angle. So I know red's over there. I know blue is over there. I know green is over here. It's just a degree, so you can find the color pretty easily. Whereas with hex, okay, the red bytes are pretty obvious, but once you start mixing red, green, and blue, you don't really know what color you're getting. Whereas with this, you've got a color wheel that you're working with. If you need to convert it, there's a site here, OKLCH.com. You can plug in your hex and get the LCH value out on the other side. And you get some pretty graphs around it as well. So that's cool. Now that you're up to speed on Tailwind, you want to build your site, you want to have some nice components on it. So let's have a look at some of that. Now, you'd have to be living under a rock not to know about shadcn UI at the moment. It's an open source collection of pre-built React components that you can just grab and use. It's based off Radix UI, which is from WorkOS. Now, it's not a traditional UI library, so you don't just pull in a dependency and then you've got everything. What you're doing is adding a template library. So you run a command, it gives you some code, and you own that code. And that's how the component renders out. If you want to change it, or go off for it. It may pull in some dependencies to work with, but you essentially own the code and you can customize it to the way you need it to be. And it's very, very AI friendly. So you've got tools like V0 that spit out, that use shadcn controls. This is kind of what it looks like. I'll just open up shadcn there. So we've got the page. I can go to components and I can go down and there's a whole bunch of different things. So drop down, select is part of HTML. But we can have, combo boxes in here where we can, actually add in this combo box functionality. So where you can type ahead and filter the results. If I want it, there's commands on how to use it, or I can use it in V0 straight away. There's a whole bunch in the list here that I can go for. So if I wanted to have little toast notifications, that's actually from Sono, and I can click on it and come up with a toast. If I had a bunch of toasts come up, you can see they kind of have this sort of stack effect. So it's really cool. I don't have to do that much to get this functionality into my site or application. So that's shadcn. So there's a whole bunch of cool stuff there. Alternatively, in terms of getting it set up, I run the init command. It will initialize some stuff, add a file to your repository so it knows how and where things are configured. I can then run commands to add the components and then use the components. So I'll just import them. There's coming from my code base. So what actually gets added to the code base? Well, you may get a bunch of code here. There's a lot going on, but it's essentially giving me a component that I can work with and some options so I can tweak the way it's rendered. If I want to change that, I can actually go in and modify exactly what I want. So I can see here, there's a whole bunch of variants being rendered here. So this is for a button. So there's a destructive button. So to be like a delete. Maybe I want it to be bigger or something. I can just modify the classes. These classes are all in Tailwind. So it's all kind of tied together. Another cool one is 21st.dev. So this is an aggregator site. So you can go in and find whatever component that you want. So if, there's a bunch here, but if I want to have, let's go here and I'll just search for Toast. Toast in UI components, there's a whole list. Well, there's two here, but there's Sonna from shadcn. And here's another one where it may have some command and turns into a tick. I get a nice little preview in terms of what I want. And if I want to use it, I can click on it. I can open components here. There's a demo, so some code there on how to use it. There's an npx command using shadcn. And if I want to pull that in and use it, or I can, there's usually like a V0 button as well. So if I want to find components, they're pretty easy to find. Another UI is Magic UI Design. Now, this is pretty cool. I won't go to the site because we actually, we feature it on, it's been used on yakshaver.ai. So if you do go to yakshaver.ai, a lot of these are built with the Magic UI Design. So you'll find that on 21st.dev as well. They index Magic UI Design, but there's a whole bunch of components there that add a real visual flair, some animations and things like that. So let's move across to TinaCMS. Now, I'll just give you the quick, what is it? Why would I use it? So yes, it's open source, Git-backed, Headless CMS. You store your content Markdown and JSON in your Git repository, so you own the data. You can define your content structure and code and get some type safety classes around that. And it integrates really well with GitHub via Tina Cloud. So when you go to push changes, that'll go through Tina Cloud and straight into your GitHub repo. Now there's a GraphQL API, so that gets supplied by Tina Cloud. So if you want to query things out, let's say you've got your documentation site for your application, you can have the exact same documentation inside your website and being rendered inside your app, being queried from the same source of truth. And you get visual editing inside TinaCMS, so you can see exactly how your site would look when you go to edit it. So everyone really benefits from this. Developers love the fact that, it's this whole everything is code concept. You have Git workflows for your content changes, and everything's programmatic. So you can customize the way things work. Editors like it because of the real-time editing interface. They can see the change before they make it. They don't really need to learn Git or Markdown. There's a nice WYSIWYG editing experience, and they get that live preview of things before they commit to it. So yeah, Yakshaver is a multi-tenant site using TinaCMS. So there's a few products actually on the site. Yakshaver is just one of them. They've done a whole bunch of cool stuff with the Magic UI components to have this really, the site feels alive when you use it because there's things happening. But they're still using TinaCMS under the hood. So there's a lot of power in terms you get from Markdown, which is really cool. If you want to get started with some of this stuff, you can use the Tina Cloud Starter that they've worked on. So there's GitHub repository for it. Another way to go and get it is to go to Tina.io, and you can copy this npx create Tina command. So I'll copy that, and I'll just load up my terminal. I can paste that in there, and that's going to ask me a few different questions. Which package manager do I want to use? And what do I want to call the project? And then there's a whole bunch of starter templates. So the Tina Cloud Starter is Next.js. So it's used Next.js starter template. I won't install it now because I selected NPM, and if I press OK, it'll download the internet. So I'll just close that. And I've actually got it already set up on a screen over here. And what I'll do is I'll just go say pnpm run dev, and I'll fire that up and we can have a look at it. So I'll go to localhost 3000. That will just fire it up. So that takes a second. And we get this cool experience. So this is using some Magic UI components. We've got pretty much what you need for a landing page. So I've got this little call out at the top where I can call out new features. We've got a starter. There's a video. I can click it. It shows a YouTube video. If I go down, we've got some statistics being showed. So if you have a product, you can actually show some statistics, some new features that you've got on your product. You may have a whole bunch of testimonials. We've got a component for that, and a call to action at the bottom. So you can do a whole bunch of things. Now you're not fixed to this, which is one of the cool things. I can go in and I can go to components. And all the components that are being used on the site, so if we go that call to action, the source code's included in the template. So if you need to customize it to what you need, it's exactly there. It's using, Tailwind. It's using Next.js 15. You can modify this stuff, and if need be, you could fire up, your Copilot or whatever. Ask it some questions in terms of, hey, I want it to look this way or work this way. And you can have some AI assistance in terms of modifying it. So this is, we release this for free. Another cool thing is, you may not notice, but in the bottom corner, we've got this, you can see this 2XL right at the bottom. That's a little helper that I put in for development mode. So when you're on different screen sizes, you can actually know which Tailwind classes are being applied. So that's just a little cool thing, because it always bugs me, like which size am I working with when I'm trying to make things work on a responsive scale. So I added that in. There's a little N in the bottom corner. So this is Next.js adding in its little thing for development mode. And when I click on it, we can see, hey, the route for this is static. So this is going to be, if I go through a build step, it'll be output as static site. Using TurboPack, I can change some preferences about how things work. So I can move this around. I can have some dev tools, and I can tweak this all in my next config file. So this is really cool. Let me go back to the slides. Yeah. Okay, so you've started a Next.js site using the Tina Cloud Starter. You've pushed it out to production. Maybe you're hosting on GitHub Pages or Vercel. You've got choices. But how do I improve the performance afterwards? Well, let's just rewind a little and go back to those, TLAs, because you may not know what they all are. So SSR, SSG, ISR. So SSR is server-side rendering. So I've got a little graph here in terms of how it works. You do a build. It deploys the application to a server. Browser comes along and requests a page from the server. The server may, go and fetch data, gets it back, and then it renders the page to the browser. So this is, think back to your classic ASP or your PHP days. This is the exact same pattern that would happen there. Server-side rendering is really good for pages that change frequently. So if you've got something like a transaction list where you want to always have the latest information, server-side rendering's for you. Now, there's a problem with this, because you may need to think about how you cache things. You may not want to, render out the page each time, because it's a lot slower to serve this stuff, because it may need to go to a database or an API multiple times. So then you look at static site generation. Now, all of a sudden, it's a much more complex interaction diagram. There's a loop happening up here, and for each of the pages, it's going and fetching data from your data sources and generating static HTML, and then at the end, it's uploading static files. But when a browser goes and requests the file, it requests the page, and it comes back with static HTML. Now, this is really good because it's the fastest way to serve pages. You've got the files on disk. So the slowest bit is going to be your, how fast can you pull things off a disk? It's the easiest thing to cache as well. So you can just chuck Cloudflare in front of it and say, hey, just cache the crap out of it. Now, it's great for pages that you don't change frequently. So your about page or something like that, because your content changes require a rebuild. So if you have a transaction list and it takes 5 minutes to do a build, you've got at least 5 minute old data at any given time, or potentially 5 minute old data. And as you add more pages, your builds will take longer because they're going to be more pages to build. So we got like super fast on one end, super, potentially slow on another. What about something in between? Well, this is where incremental static regeneration, ISR, comes in. Now, it's an even more complex diagram, but it's a bit of both if we break this down. I'll show it to you in a flowchart because it may make more sense. So we do a build, and for each page that we've identified as static, we go through the static generation process. And we upload the static HTML and the revalidation logic to our server. Now, a browser requests a page, and the server just goes, hey, is this page stale? Because we've got some revalidation logic. It's not stale? Here you go. Here's some cached HTML. It may be from the disk. It may be from memory. If it is stale, okay, well, let's just rebuild that page, and we'll follow the server-side rendering. So the beauty of this is we get the fastest. We deliver things as quickly as we can. So if it's cached in memory, cached on disk, we get that static speed. If we do need to server-side render it because it's a transaction list, we do that, and we're gonna have the up-to-date information. So it's great for pages that do change frequently. So if you have like an events thing, you can say, hey, look, I want to re-render this. I just want to have incremental static regeneration on it. And it's going to have like a different TTL to something like my transaction list page where I may say, no, serve this. I always want this to be up to date. But events, I change it once a day. So let's cache it for a day. It doesn't really matter that we cache it, but I don't want to rebuild all the time because we're always adding events to this thing. These TTLs are defined in code as well. So they live in your site as opposed to being on Cloudflare. It's going to be easier to manage. I can't really see any downsides to this. It's a really good process. So now you know about all the different TLAs. Use server-side rendering for your volatile data. Use static site generation for stuff that doesn't change. So you really want it to be static. And ISR, it depends. So you can tweak it to what you need. Next.js will let you pick and mix this stuff, and you choose the right pattern for when you need it. So how does that look in your Next.js application? Well, this is a page here that is from the Cloud Starter template, and we got this revalidate variable being exported. Now that says 300, so this is seconds, so this means, hey, revalidate this after 5 minutes. Now that means it's not going to be, it's SSR by default until this revalidate comes in. The fact that it's got the revalidate means we're going to do ISR. Now, I can even improve that and say by adding at the bottom, this generate static params, and this will let me go and render this as part of static site generation. So at build time, I'll actually have a copy there. And, if I'm caching this for a day, I'll most probably serve that most of the time. If I'm, rebuilding once a day, eventually I'll have a newer thing in static. So there's a few different ways to do that. Other ways of improving your site is understanding that, it's all on GitHub, and there's a lot of great GitHub actions out there. And a lot of cool things you can do on GitHub. So who here has modified their GitHub profile? github.com/username, but whatever your username is. Lots of people. Cool. So this is my profile. I've got a whole bunch of stuff on here. I've even got some dynamic stuff happening. So if we go down, we've got a list of my blog posts and my YouTube videos that have been recently published. And this page will updates every day. Now, how do I do that? Well, it's in my, so my username on GitHub is Wikipedia. So Wikipedia/Wikipedia is a special repository that has my profile, and it's all in Markdown in here. So I actually have some special tags, so I know where to put my blog posts and my YouTube videos, and I just use a GitHub action that runs once a day, grabs the latest stuff, and dumps it in here. If you're putting your stuff in TinaCMS, you're going to have Markdown content as well. You can grab that, maybe run some AI to summarize it and chuck it in there, or you can use this action, blog post workflow, to call an RSS feed, grab the information, and chuck it in your profile, and really boost how your profile looks. So I find that really, really cool. If you've got if you're writing content, public content, you may want to use something like this Alex recommends to check your language just to make sure it's inclusive. And you can get some recommendations on that. So when pull requests come up, you can scan the content and get some recommendations. So you can have nicer content out there. Another thing that people are concerned with websites is their Lighthouse scores. So Lighthouse is a thing from Chrome, and it checks your performance, accessibility, best practices, SEO for your site, and gives you recommendations. And it gives you scores. Now, there's a whole bunch of actions out there that cover off checking the Lighthouse stats of your site. So you can have a look at those. This is one of them here, Lighthouse Check Action. And it's pretty cool because once you set it up, you can actually get it to output things into your workflow. You can get reports that you have as artifacts so you can look at them later. You can get it to add PR comments to your PR so you can start tracking things to see what's happening. And you can even fail workflows if they don't meet minimum standards. So you can put that in place, and then your site is always going to be performant because your PR, you won't be able to merge your PR if the performance drops off. Now, we use this on the SSW website. We've got an action that goes here and actually checks the performance to look for changes but as compared to the main branch, so we can make sure that we're not introducing something unnecessarily. So depending on the content change, we'll look at this and go, oh, well, why are these numbers going down? Well, it may just be it was slower on that day versus everything else, or it may have been some new component was added that's actually slowing down the site. So we can pick this up a lot earlier. Anyone find this stuff useful? Yep, lots of people. Awesome. So hopefully you'll use some of these tools on either your profile or your site or your company site. Cool. So we've gone through Next.js changes. So what's new with 15? We've gone through Tailwind changes. What's new with version 4? We've looked at some UI component sites out there. So I don't want to see any boring sites anymore because you've got all the tools to make some really pretty and really cool looking sites that come alive, or applications. We've gone through some TinaCMS stuff. So you know how to put that into your application, and you've got a great starter template. So you're going to be starting off with pretty cool looking site in the first place. And you've gotten some tips in terms of how to improve your site performance. So thank you.